All right, welcome. My name is Brian Rickard. I will be your finite instructor for this semester. Briefly, I know this classroom, the layout of it sucks. It's just one big block of seats, which is really difficult, and there's not a lot of room to get through, but it's just what we've got. I teach in this classroom every single semester, so I have requested to not, but it's what I get. So anyway, I cannot have people seated on the stairs or blocking any exits. Fire code issue. So if you ever come in late, you just kind of walk over people, squeeze through. It's just kind of what we have to deal with. So I apologize for that, but it's what it is. Anyway, today we're going to talk about the class, and then we're going to talk about some math. So first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. Hopefully over the course of the semester, I'll learn some things about some of you all, at least the ones of you all come to my office hours or email me or those sorts of things. If you're the type of student who likes to remain anonymous, that's perfectly fine. Last semester, I was looking through grades at the end of the semester, and I had someone who had a 99% in class, and I realized I did not know who they were. And that was fine. They wanted to be anonymous, and that's perfectly fine. But I do absolutely welcome you to come to my office hours, come to my tutoring hours, stop by, say hi after class, email me, all of those things. But anyway, I'll let you get to know me just a little bit. I am originally from a small town in Missouri called Monette. It is kind of in between Springfield and Joplin, about an hour and a half north of here. When I was in high school, I thought that I was very smart and very good at math. Oh yeah, we're the Cubs. Forgot about that one. So my perceived math ability in high school, A+. I thought I was awesome at math. As you would imagine, Monette is not where a lot of mathematicians come from. My actual math ability, as judged by my very first test in college math, was slightly different. I barely passed, straight 60% on that. That was Honors Cal 1 here at U of A many years ago. In that class, there were no redos. There were no second chances in that class. I did manage to pull it up to a C by the end of the semester. That was the only C I got in college, but that was my first math experience. One of the things I will harp on both today and later on through the semester is I designed this class with second chances so that you can make mistakes. But here's the thing, you've got to learn from them. If I have so many students who will fail the first test, and then just do the exact same thing for the second test and fail it. And do the same for the third test and the same for the fourth test. And then they'll email me after the fourth test and ask how they can pass the class. And of course, the answer is they can't at that point. So it is fine to make mistakes. Like I said, everything in this class is built with second chances. But you've got to learn, you've got to adapt, you've got to figure it out. This is likely going to be very different than whatever previous math course you took. However, it is a very doable class. You will likely hear horror stories from upperclassmen about how difficult this class is. There's a certain type of student who tells those stories. Last spring, I got an email forwarded to me from my chair who had it forwarded to him from the dean. So a student in this class, not in my class, but in someone else's finite class, emailed the dean and talked about how half the students in this class had failed the last test, and that everyone was dropping, yada, yada, yada. And so the dean was very concerned, emailed it down to my chair and then to me. It turned out this kid hadn't been to class in over a month. The class was actually doing great. I think there was a B average on the most recent test in that class. Some people just don't come and think that it's way harder than it is. It is a hard class. I will tell you that. It's a challenging class. You will have to work hard. But it is a very doable class if you work. It is not something that you should be overly scared. Some relevant but somewhat boring things about myself. I got my bachelor's degree in applied math here at the U of A. I then went on to get my master's in higher education here at the U of A. I then worked in administration here at the university for a number of years. And then I went on to get my PhD in educational statistics. Got my dissertation title there. It was very boring. I'm fairly confident I'm the only person who's ever read it. But anyway, and then I became a math teacher. I've been an instructor or professor since 2010. I was an instructor when I started in 2010. And then once I finished my PhD, I became a professor. But even before that, I was a tutor at the university. So I've actually been tutoring students at this university, finite mathematics, since 2003. So likely since many of you or most of you were born. So I've seen many, many students over the years, and I will give you as much advice as I can about how to make it through this class successfully because I've seen a lot of people attempt it. I've been the coordinator of Finite since 2013. That means that I am the person who designs this class. I am the one who writes the tests, who designs the homework, who creates the schedule, all that sort of stuff. You will find that's fairly common amongst your very large classes. So if you're taking Chemistry 1 or Biology, those are coordinated courses in which there's one person who designs everything and then multiple people who teach it. I've taught, that number's wrong. I haven't updated that in a few semesters because I haven't thought to update it or count. I had to, last time I went up for a promotion, I had to count, and at that point it was 80. That's been a couple of years ago, so it's over 90 now. So I've taught many, many, many sections of finite over the years, as well as other classes. So done it a lot. My research, I do as a professor, I do research. I don't do research into math exactly. I do research into math education. So how do people learn? So I do research into Calculus 1. I do research in tutoring centers. My most recent publication, well, I guess a couple of publications ago, was on public understanding of COVID data, looking at how people understand probabilities and then their decisions of whether to get vaccinated and things like that. My job. So some things that I like about my job. I like teaching. I know very few people my age who actually enjoy their job, but I really do enjoy my job. I like standing here and talking about math. I enjoy when people come to my office hours and getting to talk about math there. So anyway, I enjoy answering math questions. I know maybe it seems like it's an inconvenience to email me or to come to my office hours or whatever. It's not. You've paid your tuition. That is payment for me doing my job, and my job is mostly answering questions. As a portion of my job, being here in the classroom is a small part of it. I only teach on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I pretty much spend all day either in office hours or answering emails or doing research. So part of my job, please feel free to ask math questions. I also enjoy working with students and other faculty. It's just a good part of the job. Some things that I like less about my job. A big one is dishonesty. Please don't be dishonest in this class. Like I mentioned, I have lots and lots of second chances in this class. There is no need to be dishonest, whether it is, taking notes into the tests or cheating on attendance by sending your friend with a clicker or whatever. But I also had, I think it was last fall, I had a student lie about why they had missed a test. And just by happenstance, I happened to figure out that they had lied about why they missed a test. If they hadn't lied to me, they could have made up the test because I give everyone a chance to make up a test that they've missed. But because they lied to me, they got an automatic 0 on it and then didn't get to make it up. So it really wasn't worth it at all. They could have just missed the test and then made it up later and it would have been just fine. So it's really not worth it. I promise I designed this class so that you can mess up and still do fine. Just be honest. Answering questions from the weekly announcement email. I do send out a weekly announcement email every single week with what's going on for the week. So what homework questions you need to be working on, what assignments we have due, quizzes, those sorts of things. So please read those. I don't love answering emails of when is our next quiz. I do have 350 students this semester. So, if even a quarter of them email me to ask when the quiz is, that's a lot of people. I would much rather spend my time answering math questions, because that's really the thing that I got hired for, not to tell people when quizzes are. My family. These are the people that I spend my time with, my wife and our daughters. That's from the first day of school, just last week. Mila on the left, Aria on the right, starting 3rd and 5th grades. My wife, Lauren, right there. Lauren, if you're a business major, which most of you are, most people taking this class are business majors, you will likely aspire to do a job somewhat like hers. She works in Bentonville. She works for Hershey, but really for Walmart essentially. But she's in charge of all like Christmas and Easter and holiday candy, strategizing and ordering whatever. I don't really know all of what she does, but anyway, she works in business. We have some pets. That is Darwin, our 11-year-old golden doodle. He is very lazy, as pictured. And then we've got Cassie. Cassie's my running dog. She is just a big ball of energy. We also have a cat. I don't have a picture on here. She doesn't like me very much. This is what I do for fun. Aside from parenting, which is my main hobby, I run really long distances. That was right after I finished running 100 miles straight. Took me just under 24 hours. Don't do that math. It's not fast. I don't frequently run that distance, but I do frequently run ultra marathons. I don't know. It's a weird hobby, but it's what I do. Some advice for this class. One is to take my advice. I will give you lots and lots of advice. I really do want everyone in this class to succeed. One, because you paid for this class and I hate to see people waste money. Two, because it throws off your educational plans if you fail this class. Also, three, selfishly, I like to look like I'm good at my job and I like for my success rates to be the best of any of the instructors. So selfishly, I also want you to do well for that reason. But I also really do want you to do well. Teaching is a lot like parenting in that I can see what's going to happen. Like I said, I have taught thousands and thousands and thousands of students this class over the many years. I know what are markers of success and markers of failure. I can likely tell you from week 2 or 3 if you're going to make it through this class. I will give you advice, but it is your choice whether to take it or not. Over this past summer, there were 2 instances in which my family went to a carnival. In both of those instances, my children wanted to win the largest stuffed animal. If you picture a very large carnival stuffed animal. At both carnivals, they were given a set amount of money that they could do whatever with, whether play games, rides, whatever. Both of them wanted to win the biggest stuffed animals. And so I asked both of them, do you see anyone here with one of those big stuffed animals? And you all can probably see where those are going. Just a reminder, these are what my children look like. They're not professional athletes or really all that coordinated. But both of them were convinced that they could spend their money and win the large stuffed animals. They did not. And so telling them that is a lot like telling students, here's how you should study, or here's why you should not wait until the last minute to do these assignments. And some of you will trust me and take my advice, and some of you, like my children, will think their dad is an idiot and will decide to try anyway, and then they will cry because they didn't win anything with their carnival money. It's fine, I get it, but I'm giving you my advice not because I just like hearing myself talk. It is because I do want you to be successful in this class, and I hope that you are. Most of you will be successful in this class. It is the notion that most people fail this class is not even close to correct. There's a very good success rate for this class. Most of you will make it through. Some of you won't. But typically it's the students who just don't study and don't show up. Work the homework as we go. I kind of mentioned this a minute ago, but people who work the homework at the very last minute, work the quizzes at the very last minute, that is a marker that is often associated with people dropping this class or not making it through. So try not to wait until the very last minute. Study for the test using the practice test. I'm always amazed at how few people actually use the practice test that I give. I wrote the test. I also wrote the practice test. They're not exactly the same, but it is a very, very good study method. Do your homework in the math lab. So over in Champions Hall, which is that direction. I know most of you are freshmen, so you probably don't know where it is yet. That's okay. If you go that direction until you get to Dixon Street, you can walk down the hill and start to walk back up the hill. It's right there on your right. But you can just type CHP into Google Maps and it'll tell you where it is. Anyway, in Champions Hall, which is where my office is, we have a tutoring lab and a testing center. The testing center is where you will take all of your tests for the semester. The tutoring center is optional, but I highly recommend going there. I will be there, aside from today, I won't be there today, every other Tuesday and Thursday for the rest of the semester. I will be there the hour before class, 9:30 to 10:30, every Tuesday, Thursday. I will be in the tutoring lab, and I welcome and encourage you to come before class to work on whatever homework you've got, to work on your quizzes, whatever. If you're not available during that time, or even if you are, that tutoring lab is open from, I think, 9 to 6 p.m. And there are almost always tutors around. So it's a great place to do your homework, because if you get stuck, you can ask for help. If you don't get stuck, you can just sit there and work by yourself if you want. But it's just a really good place to get help and to get through your homework successfully. So visit my office and or tutoring hours. I do have both. I call them something different. The hours that I spend in the tutoring lab, I call tutoring hours. I then have office hours, which those I hold virtually over Zoom. Just because I also teach online versions of this class, so that way I can have any of my students come by. But those I do Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. The tutoring hours I do Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you are more than welcome to come by those as often as you like. The office hours on Zoom, I do with a waiting room, so I only help one student at a time. So whoever's there's first, I answer some questions. If you have lots of questions, that's fine. I may just skip around to some other people to try to make sure I get to everyone. But if you sign on to my virtual office hours and it says you're in the waiting room, just hang tight and I'll get you. Learn from your mistakes. I mentioned this before. It is fine to make mistakes. This is something that I talk about in parenting a lot as well. It is fine to make mistakes. You can royally screw up the first 20% of this class. You can get a 0 on the first test. You can sleep through it. You could still get an A in this class. But not if you don't learn from your mistakes over that first part of the class and do something different for the second part of the class. So anyway, it's fine to make mistakes. It's fine to bomb a test. Like I said, I got a D on my first math test in college. I understand what that's like. And that's part of the reason why I give second chances. But you got to do something different. All right, that's my little slideshow about me and a little about the class. Let's talk about the actual class itself. All right, so this is our Blackboard. It should look basically the same as what yours looks like, only you don't see the instructor links right there. I'm gonna scroll down just a minute so you can see the Zoom lecture and lecture recordings links. So I do stream and record all of my lectures. So this is recording right now. And I post that. So if you want to ever attend virtually, so one important thing, you don't get any points for attending virtually. So you really only want to do that if you're sick, or if for some reason you just can't make the class. That's really for like occasional use, is not meant to be a regular thing, because being in class is worth a lot of your points. But anyway, if you are sick and you want to attend live, you can use that Zoom lecture link. However, if you're sick and don't feel like attending live, you can always watch the recording later on. Or if you just want to rewatch some of the examples that we did in class, you can rewatch them later on as well. So those will be found under lecture recordings. I usually post those in the afternoon every Tuesday and Thursday. So. All right, let's go up to our syllabus. So this website here, which is linked out of Blackboard, has our syllabus, frequently asked questions, lots of other information. It also has notes, which I often forget to talk about. But this has been a few years now. But one of our veteran teachers didn't know finite, and she decided she didn't like being in the tutoring lab and not knowing finite. So she just took the class for funsies. And she gave me her notes that she made from that class. And they're really good. So anyway, they are available and highly recommend them if you get stuck on problems or if you just want some good notes. But anyway, let's check out our syllabus. I won't go over everything in the syllabus because it's a lot, but I do want to hit some really important parts. So this is Math 20503. I'm still getting used to saying that because it used to be just 2053. They added a 5th digit into all of our class numbers this semester. So if you're looking through course materials and something says 2053, then I missed. Textbook for this class is Interactive Finite Mathematics by Ritchie, Rickard, and Merkin. The Rickard there is me. I did write the textbook. Two important things about that. One, I was not the one who chose to use it in this class. That was done by a committee that did not include me. And two, I don't make any money off of sales to you all. I do get royalties from other universities that use my book, but not from you all. Instead, any royalties that I would have made from sales at this university go directly to the tutoring center to provide a few hundred hours of tutoring per semester. So part of what you're paying and paying for the textbook just goes right back into helping you learn. So anyway, some things you'll need for this class. One, you will need a turning technology clicker. If you were here, if this is not your freshman year, I'm sorry, because they changed the way they did these, and now it is significantly cheaper. So if you purchased one of these last year, it was like $65 because you had to purchase a license with it. The university now paid for a license for all students, so you don't have to pay that anymore. And so now this is $14. So significantly cheaper. I'm sorry if you bought this last year. The nice thing is that now this is not tied to a subscription. So you buy this for $14 this semester. I highly recommend selling it to a friend next semester for $10. Because there will be finite students or survey of Cal students or whatever who need one next semester. So anyway, or if you just want to borrow one, if you have a friend who has taken this class before or any class that uses a clicker and you can borrow one, great. You don't have to do anything else. You do have to log in and actually sign up for an account and put your clicker number on there so I know whose clicker is whose. But there's no more subscription that you have to purchase for it. You do need an actual physical clicker. We don't use the app. The app, unfortunately, there was just way too much cheating that I had problems with. So I only use the clicker, especially now that it's only $14. I feel less bad about it. But anyway, you'll need one of these. Also, if you're going to buy one elsewhere, like eBay, Facebook Marketplace, Amazon, whatever, make sure you get the version with the screen. If you don't buy the version with the screen, it is very easy to be using it for a long time and it not be working and you not know it. With the screen, you will be absolutely 100% sure that it is working correctly and your answers are being recorded. Without the screen, it doesn't. Do not recommend those. Again, this is only $14. I know any amount of money can be a lot, especially when you're paying for all the college stuff, but it's worth it to have the right clicker. You also need a calculator. I recommend the TI-84. However, a TI-83 works just fine. This is the one I have had for many, many, many years. I probably had this for 20 years now. Works just fine. Still does all the same things the newer calculator does, only mine's not in color. The testing center where you'll take your test does have the newer color calculators. They all work the same. Even if you have a TI-83, which came out in the 90s, those still work just fine too. So whatever calculator you can get is the cheapest, go for it. It's perfectly fine. Let's see. Okay, let's look at MyLab. So MyLab is where all of your assignments are going to be for this class. Your tests, your quizzes, basically everything except for stuff we do in class. So if you go to MyLab Math and click all assignments, that'll take you to all of our assignments. You'll see there's also a gradebook link. I don't keep any grades in Blackboard because they're just in MyLab instead, which is where all your assignments are. There's also a calendar here if you want to see when all of your assignments are due. But let's go to the all assignments link. So the way I do assignments is I have a whole unit's worth of assignments open up at a time. So all of these assignments that you see here are about the first month of class. So it covers all the way up to our first test, and then right before the first test, the second unit's material will open. The first thing you'll want to complete is the course entry quiz. It's basically just a syllabus quiz. Make sure you understand the course policies. Then you'll go on to the orientation homework. If you tried to open the orientation homework first, it'll say, no, sorry, you got to do the course entry quiz first. So anytime you see a green flag on an assignment, it means there's something else you have to complete before you can open that assignment. The orientation homework is half just how to use MyLab. So how do you enter a fraction? How do you enter an exponent? How do you graph a line? Things like that. And then half algebra. We then have a couple different types of assignments. We'll start with pre-class assignments. You will have a pre-class assignment due before almost every class period. Basically what it is it is there to give you the very basic information about whatever section we are going to cover the next class period. So since this is a Tuesday, Thursday class, almost every Monday and Wednesday you will have a pre-class assignment due. This Wednesday you have 2 of them due because we didn't have one due yesterday because, well, you hadn't been here yet. So instead of having one due yesterday, I just pushed it to Wednesday, so you have 2 of them due on Wednesday. So anyways, what those look like are, there's usually a couple short videos, usually 2 to 4 minutes. So pretty short videos that just give you the basics of the information you need to be able to work some basic problems. The reason why we do that is that gives us time to work more complicated, harder stuff in class, and to give us time to allow you to work in groups on stuff in class as well. So those pre-class assignments should not take terribly long, but they give you just a little primer for what we're going to be talking about the next day. So again, most Mondays and Wednesdays, you're going to have one of those 2. We also have homework. So the homework covers an entire unit. So that first homework assignment is like 80 questions or so, which is a lot of questions, but it is over the next month worth of class. It is not due until September 16th. That is true. But you have to complete certain portions of it to open quizzes. So for example, down here on quiz 2, you have to have completed 70% of the homework to be able to open that quiz. You may have noticed there's no quiz 1 here. There's a quiz 2, there's a quiz 3, but no quiz 1. That's because quiz 1 is our practice for the testing center. So every semester, we like to have a practice run of our testing center. That way, the freshmen, most of you, will get to practice using our testing center on a low stakes assignment. So quizzes are worth points, but they are only worth 10 points. I would much rather something go completely awry with you using the testing center on a 10-point assignment than on a 100-point quiz. So we give you a practice run at the testing center. That'll be next week. I think our class is on Friday. I think is the day that you'll be able to take it. Testing center opens at 9 a.m. and then the doors close at 5:30. So you have to be in the door by 5:30. And then as long as you're in the door by 5:30, you can get the quiz. It'll be the same for tests. So those are pretty much all the assignment types that we have. Oh, the quizzes. Quizzes you get 3 attempts at, and it only counts your highest score in the grade book. Except for the first quiz, which is the one in the testing center. We unfortunately don't have the testing center long enough to give everyone 3 attempts. So you do only get 1 attempt at that quiz. However, we do drop your lowest quiz at the end of the semester. So if quiz 1 happens to be your lowest quiz, it's just going to get thrown. All right, so that's a bunch of this stuff. The clicker quiz is what's tied to this. We don't really use this for attendance. I use it to ask questions. So we will pretty much every class period starting Tuesday of next week use this clicker both at the beginning and the end of class and often in the middle as well. So you're going to make sure to want to have one of these. 10% of your course grade is tied to this clicker. So, and again, you do have to be in this classroom to be able to earn the points. So like I said, if you're sick, you can attend on Zoom if you want, but you can't get any clicker points. Let's see. Talk about a lot of this stuff. We do have some projects. We'll talk about those later in the semester. Tests. We'll talk about those later on too. One thing that's important, and we'll talk about this before the quiz next week, you can't take anything into the testing center with you aside from pen or pencil and your student ID. Cannot take can't take a purse, a backpack, can't take a phone, can't take a smartwatch, nothing that connects to the internet. If you are found in the testing center with something that connects to the internet, you just get an automatic 0. Doesn't matter whether you're using it or not, that's just the policy. So if a testing center proctor is walking around and they see you typing and you have an Apple Watch on, you'll just get a 0. They'll let you finish the test, but they'll note it down and then I'll have to give you a 0. So anyway, make sure you don't take any of that stuff into the testing center with you. The testing center lobby does have lockers that you can lock. So lock any, expensive belongings in there. If you would, please turn your ringer off on your cell phone, just as a courtesy to the other people in the lobby. But anyway, yeah. If you take all 4 tests, you can choose at the end of the semester to retake one of your tests. Also, if you just miss a test, you can retake that one at the end of the semester. So we give everyone a redo on a test. So if you sleep through the test, or if you forget to complete the homework that's required to be able to take the test, or whatever, you can retake it or take it for the first time at the end of the semester. You only get one of those, but you do get one at the end of the semester. No excuse required. So you don't even have to email me. You can email me, but you don't have to. Now, if you have a really good excuse for why you've got to miss, you can email me. Anyway, we do have that makeup test option at the end of this. Test scheduling. So we are a group 3 class. We are section 12. So our group 3 test dates are these right here on the right. So you can see all of the test dates for the entire semester. So if you are doing any sort of traveling or whatever, please make sure to look at those. We do not offer rescheduled test dates for convenience reasons. So if you're taking a vacation, we don't offer to move tests. There are 1,300 people in finite. I teach 350 of them over the course of 6 tests. I just don't have the time to reschedule tests at people's desire. So those are the dates you have. You have 2 dates for both. So just make sure you're going to be here in Fayetteville on at least one of those dates. The makeup test is the only one you only get 1 date for, but all the rest of them you get 2 dates. The final, those dates aren't consecutive just because our official final date is on Thursday of finals week, but we offer it early on the Sunday before finals week. So that is your other option. There's all the grades, how they all break down. You can see the clicker quiz is at 10% of your grade. I'll mention this later on, but please don't cheat with the clicker. Don't give it to a friend and have them come to class and click in. My attendance policy is very generous. What I do for attendance, or really just the clicker grade in general, is I give everyone a very generous number of free days. That just means for whatever reason you didn't show up, I'm throwing those points out for you. And I do that for a very generous number of days. Because there's plenty of reasons why you would not be able to attend. Some of them may come with a doctor's note, some might not. I don't care. I understand that you won't be able to be here every day. You don't need to tell me. You don't need to send your clicker with a friend. Just stay home. It's not going to hurt your grade. The only people whose clicker grade is hurt are people who skip frequently, or people that send their clicker to class with a friend, and then I catch them and they lose their entire clicker grade, which is 10% of their grade. And that does happen. I typically catch at least 1 student every semester. It's not worth it. You lose 10% of your grade, whereas if you just didn't come, you would lose nothing. So choose that option. I promise it's a lot better. Anyway, let's see. Talked about calculator, honesty policy. Please don't cheat. Accommodations. I do need to read this part. So under university policy and federal and state law, students with documented disabilities are entitled to reasonable accommodations to ensure the student has equal opportunity to perform in class. If any member of the class has such a disability and needs special academic accommodations, we can request services from the CEA, which is at that website. You can read the rest of it if you like. Part I wanted to make sure you knew about. CEA is good for permanent things, dyslexia, ADHD, any sort of physical impairments, whatever. However, they also, some of you might be thinking, oh, I wouldn't qualify for that. However, they do also work with people with temporary disabilities as well. Last spring, I had a student come back after spring break with 2 broken arms from 2 different incidents, oddly enough. And so they worked with him and got him extra time on the test because it kind of took him a really long time to do anything. So anyway, they are also helpful for that sort of thing as well. If you have to miss class or tests or any university sponsored events, so that could be athletes, band members, student governments. There are certain programs like architecture where they take field trips, whatever it is, please make sure to read that paragraph. Just FYI, I do record my class lectures. There's a camera in the back of the room that's recording me in that screen. Probably also gets the back of a couple people's heads. Just FYI, that's what's happening. Yeah, that's pretty much all I needed to go through there. Any questions? Should have mentioned earlier. Yeah.
Do we not get a calculator for the test?
Yeah, so the testing center will give you a calculator for the test. And it's the new color TI-84 plus C. So yeah, that's the one they give you. Any other questions? All right, so a little bit about what the material is like in this class, because the name tells you nothing. Really not a very good name. I didn't name it. It's what it is. Finite just means, you know, it's countable. It's not infinite. Although we do talk about a couple things in this class that are infinite, so it really doesn't make sense. But that's okay. Finite is a class that's mostly taken by business majors because there are lots of aspects of it that you will see in future business classes. So we're going to start off the semester with linear systems of equations, correlation or regression, and then linear programming. So all of those things have to do with straight lines and solving things surrounding those. Our second unit is on probability and counting. Probability is necessary for statistics, so that gives you a background knowledge for that. Our third unit is finance, so we'll talk about interest rates, loans, mortgages, credit cards, all sorts of fun stuff like that. Probably the most applicable part of the course for your everyday life. And then in our fourth unit, we're going to do some introduction to statistics and some game theory. Game theory is something that you see in some upper level business classes. So, anyway, that's what the class is. That's the kind of grand overview of the topics we cover. The class itself is an applied algebra course. So if you've taken college algebra or took a high school algebra course, you're not going to be learning any new algebra skills. All of the algebra skills you have, we will put some of them to use. But honestly, we use technology more than anything in this class because that's what you're going to be doing in the real world. If you are a business major, almost certainly you're going to spend most, if not every day, working in Excel. And Excel is just a tool where there are functions where you put in numbers and it gives you numbers. And that is what I want you to learn is how to properly know what information to input into technology, how to interpret numbers that come out of technology, and then how to use those to make decisions. So that is what this class is about. Now, it is unlikely that you are going to use any individual thing that we do in class later in life. That's not the purpose of this class. I often hear people say, when are we going to use this? The answer is honestly, rarely ever, but that's not what it's about. The point of this class is to teach you numerical problem solving, because that is something that many people do not have. And if you want a job in the business world, being able to understand how numbers work and how to solve problems with them is very, very advantageous. So I see this class a lot like I see training for a sport. So drive down Razorback Avenue where you have the women's athletic facility and the men's athletic facility. Do you ever see a woman on the volleyball court doing squats or a guy on the football field doing bicep curls? No. Do they train using those things? Yes. So the things they're doing for training are not the exact things they do. Yes, they do also train playing the actual sport, but they also train their body. So this course is about training your mind to be able to numerically problem solve, even if you're not going to be doing the exact same types of problems that we're doing. That is not the thing. So anyway, just FYI, that's kind of the purpose of the class. And So yeah, knowing how to use the calculator, knowing how to use Excel is hopefully going to be something that you learn a little bit about. All right. I think that's all I have before talking about material. Any questions before we jump into? You are welcome to ask questions at any point, even in the middle of while I'm talking. So please ask questions at any point during the semester. Let's go ahead and get started. We'll start off with a couple of things that are in the orientation homework. There's one topic in the orientation homework that people often get stuck on. I do recommend taking notes in this class because you will see a lot of this stuff later on. And it's a lot easier to look back through your notes than to try to search through the recording of the lecture to find what's missing. So we're going to start with y equals e to the x. I'll give you just a minute to pull out a notebook. So you have undoubtedly used exponential equations before. It may be a little while since you talked too much about them, however. The exponential equation e to the x looks like this. It is an exponential growth equation. The reason why we would need to know about it is once we get to our finance unit, we do talk about functions that grow exponentially because there are some types of financial accounts that earn interest that increases exponentially. So that's why we're going to learn about it. E is an irrational number, kind of like pi. It is not a number that can be expressed as a fraction or as a decimal. It's like 2.719 something, something, something. It's called Euler's number. Euler was a mathematician. His name started with an E, so E for Euler. Well, let's say we wanted to solve for something like 4 equals 2 e to the x. So in a financial situation, I will learn this a little later on. This is the starting amount of money. That's the ending amount of money. So here we want to go from $2 to $4. And X would be, well, there's two variables up there, but X has to do with both time and the rate at which the money is invested. So for example, if we're dealing with exponentially increasing interest, and we want to know how long to invest something to get to a certain goal, we would need to solve an equation like this. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to use technology wherever possible. However, there's no way to get our calculator to do something like this. We do need to know a little bit about exponential functions before we can use our calculator. So our first step is going to be to get the e to the x by itself. So we'll divide by 2. It's going to give us 2 equals e to the x. Now from there, we can't multiply, divide, add, or subtract to get the x by itself. But that is what we want, is to get the x by itself. When we're dealing with exponential equations, we instead rely on inverses. Maybe a little while since you've thought or used inverses. So just as a real easy example, I do not know what the square root of 7 is. It is a decimal of some sort, less than 3, bigger than 2. But I do know what the square root of 7 squared is. And that's because those two are inverse functions. What one does, the other undoes. So I can tell you that the square root of 7 squared is 7 without actually needing to know what the square root of 7 was. We can use that same idea with exponential equations, because we do have an inverse exponential equations. And inverse functions always mirror each other along that diagonal line there. And that inverse function there is y equals log base e of x or natural log of x is what we typically call it. Natural log is just a log with a base of e. And since those are inverse functions of one another, if we apply one of them to the other one, they just kind of cancel each other out. So if we take the natural log of both sides here, on the left-hand side, we just get whatever the natural log of 2 is, which our calculator can give us that number, some decimal. And then on the right-hand side, we have natural log of e to the x. The natural log and the e are going to cancel. And that's just going to leave us with an x. Just like the square root and the square undo one another with our 7 example, the e and the natural log undo one another here. And so we get that x is whatever the natural log is. One thing you'll notice is that every time I wrote a natural log, I included parentheses around what I took the log of. That is important because if you don't use parentheses, then you can forget where they go. And there is, I forget which question it is on the orientation homework. But a lot of it is the question I get asked most the first week of class, is how to get by this one question. And all of it can be solved if you just use parentheses around anything you take the natural log of. Because I think you get something like, if you don't use parentheses, natural log of x plus 2. And if you don't use parentheses, then when you try to type something into your calculator, they give you some number for x, say x is 4. So let's say we've got natural log of 4 plus 2. But the calculator will put an opening parenthesis there. And then you've got to decide where to put the closing parenthesis. Well, natural log of x plus 2 is equivalent to the natural log of x plus 2. Which is not the same as the natural log of, and here, not the same as the natural log of x plus 2. Those are very different things. But again, if you just use parentheses from the start, you won't have that issue. All right, any questions? Okay. All right, let's jump into our first unit of material then. We're going to start off by talking about linear systems of equations. So linear means straight line, means our x's don't have exponents. And then system just means we have more than one equation. So let's say we had -2, or sorry, that's wrong. Just reading my notes here. X minus 2, that's where -2 goes. X minus 2y equals 1. And 2x minus y equals 5. Graphically, what that looks like is about something like that. The point of these problems is to find where they intersect. And that point is called the solution, which for this problem, if we graphed it and we were able to look to see, we would see that it's 3, 1. So x is 3, y is 1. Okay, you may think, why would we want to do this? Well, we'll get to these examples later on. But one of the more relevant examples of why we might want to know when two lines intersect is because of projections. So projections are something that every business does. Forecasting is a very big part of any business. Forecasting sales, forecasting market share, all of these things. And those are done with statistical methods, and those statistical methods give you a line. Sometimes a curved line, although honestly, a straight line is typically your best bet, but that's not for this class. But one of the things we will be looking at in a couple of, just next week, is regression. And so we will look at what would happen when two, or how we find when two regression lines intersect. So for example, if you working for a business and your product is growing in market share and you want to know when would it match that of some sort of competitor, this would be something that could be done to figure that out. All right, so how do we solve it without just graphing it? Because graphing it's fine, but it only works if we only have X and Y. It doesn't work if we have X, Y, Z, which we will often have. So how can we solve it otherwise? The first method we're going to look at is probably the method that you were taught in high school. This is not the method we're going to use in this class, but I want to try to tie this back to something you've learned before. So the method you likely used was called elimination, where you would multiply an equation by a number. In this case, I'm going to multiply the top row by -2. And then I'm going to add the bottom row to that. And we add these, the -2x and the 2x gives us 0. That's why I chose -2 to multiply by the first row, because I wanted to eliminate one of my variables. That's why it's called elimination. We then have 4y minus y. That's going to give us a positive 3y. And then -2 plus 5, that gives us 3. We divide by 3, we're going to get y equals 1, which is, of course, the same answer from the graph. Now, once we know y is 1, we can plug that value into either one of these equations to figure out what x is. So let's do that. 2x minus y, which we just figured out was 1, equals 5. Now what I can do is add 1 to both sides, and that'll give us 2x equals 6. And if I divide by 2, I'll get x equals 3. Again, same thing we got. Right. Now, again, that is not going to be the method we use in this class. That is the method you would learn in an algebra class, and that's great. But I don't want you spending all your time doing that algebra because you already learned how to do that algebra. I don't want to test if you can redo that algebra again. Someone else already tested you on whether you could do that exact algebra. So instead, in this class, we will focus more on applications, meaning this class is mostly word problems. So the difficult part of this class will be taking word problems, coming up with the equations. The calculator is going to do the work to solve those equations, and then we need to interpret the answers. So let's look at how we would solve the same system using the calculator. We'll work on word problems next time, but for today, we're just going to look at the basics of how do we even solve it using the calculator. So exact same system, x minus 2y equals 1. 2x minus y is equal to 1. Same exact system. We already know what the answer is going to be. X is going to be 3, y is going to be 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this system and put it into an augmented matrix. That's what it's called. In this matrix, each row is going to represent an equation. We're going to have 2 rows. The first equation, one for the second equation. And each column is going to represent either the coefficients for a variable or the constants of the equation. So the first column will be the x's, second column will be the y's, And then the third column will be those numbers we see off on the right-hand side of our equation. Those we call our constants. So for our first equation, that's our top row, our x doesn't have a coefficient, but we know if we just see an x there, that's really a 1x. Coefficient for y is -2 on that first equation, and then our constant is 1. Now we don't use an equal sign in our matrix. Instead, we're going to draw a vertical line right there to represent where the equal sign would go. So we're kind of separating off the two parts of our matrix. And so that's actually why it's called an augmented matrix, because we are taking what's called the coefficient matrix, that's that part, and we are augmenting or adding on the coefficient or the constant matrix. Sorry, too many C words. All right, second row, we have a 2 as our coefficient in front of the x. Y has a negative sign, so that would be a -1y. And then our constant there is 5. So now that we have it in that form, now we can put it into our calculator. If you have a calculator with you, I would recommend working this out with me. My calculator. All right. One thing I will mention about the calculator, and some of you may have used these a lot in high school, and so you may be used to them. I mentioned earlier that any version of this calculator is fine. So TI-84, TI-84 Plus, the color one, even the TI-83 is fine, because they all work the same. Even the TI-83, which was introduced back in the 90s. Because of that, the user interface on these is terrible. To be able to do what we're going to do, we have to enter and exit out of the matrix menu 3 different times to be able to do this, which is weird. Especially in this day and age where you have touchscreen devices that can go back and forth and do things really easily. Anyway, TI has a monopoly on the calculator market, and they apparently see no need to update. So anyway, we've got what we've got. Anyway, we're going to go to the matrix menu. So we'll hit the second button on my calculator. That's this blue button right here. And then 3 buttons down, you'll see it says matrix right above it. But if the button is the x to the -1 button. Second, and then that x to the -1 button, 3 buttons below. We're then going to use these arrows so that we can get over to the edit menu. See here that the edit menu is highlighted. I'm just going to select matrix A to use as my matrix. First things it wants to know are the dimensions. So our matrix there has 2 rows. So rows are always the thing we put in first. We've got 2 of those. Columns, we have a column for x coefficients, column for y coefficients, column for the constants. So we have 3 columns. After you type those in, it should pull up a matrix the size and shape that you're expecting. So you should be able to see what it is we're looking at there. And we're just going to type everything in. So we got 1, we've got -2. Now, one thing to be careful about on this calculator, I don't know why they did this. We have both a minus button and a negative button. If you try to put -2 here, the calculator is going to give us an error, because when you use the minus button, it's expecting a subtraction, rather than when you use the negative button, it's just seeing that that number is negative. So anyway, just be aware of that. You get an error when entering numbers. That's probably what it was. All right, so we got 1, -2, 1. We got 2, -1, 5. Got all of that in there. Should look exactly like the matrix we've got over there on the left. Now, there are a couple problems, and we'll come back to these, where it's not in standard form. This is what's called standard form. You have certainly seen slope-intercept form, y = mx + b. If it starts out in that form, we just need to subtract the x over to get it in this form, and then we can use the calculator. But it does have to be in standard form for us to use the calculator to solve it. So if it's ever not in that form, just Move your x's and y's until it is. So it should be x first, then y, and the constant. Anyway, all right, so then we have to quit out of the matrix menu. So we're gonna hit the blue button second, and the button right next to it, you'll see that it says quit right above it. We're gonna hit that mode button, second, and then quit. Now we have to go back into the matrix menu. So second, and then that x to the -1 button again. We're then gonna go right one to where it says math. And then we're going to go up. RREF. Write that down. RREF. This stands for reduced row echelon form. Or in other words, it's just a simplified matrix. What we're asking it for. We're asking for it to simplify our matrix. Now, just FYI, when we use this function, it uses a process called Gauss-Jordan. Which are two mathematicians who came up with this. It's not, I'm not going to test you on what RREF means. I'm not going to test you on whether you know if Gauss-Jordan makes any sense. I'm only telling you this because there are some homework problems that say use Gauss-Jordan to solve this system. And sometimes students get confused by, well, what does that mean? What do I need to do? The calculator does the Gauss-Jordan method for us. So if it says use Gauss-Jordan, just use RREF. Most of our functions are based on what the actual thing does, but our matrix one, it's named after the format of our answer. I don't know why, that's what they do. So anyway, that's what RREF stands for. All right, so we'll select RREF. And then we're going to go back to the matrix menu for a third time. So second matrix, and then we'll select matrix A, our first matrix. You don't have to close parentheses, you can if you want. We'll just hit enter, and it simplifies our matrix. So we get 1, 0, 3, 0, 1, 1. So let's write that down. So we did RREF, our matrix A. And that gave us a new matrix, 1, 0, 3, 0, 1, 1. Where, as a reminder, that was X, that was Y, or at least the coefficients of X and Y. The vertical line was our equal sign, and the right-hand side were our constants. Now, on our calculator, notice that we didn't have that vertical line, right? No vertical line anywhere in there. But I will tell you that on this test, on this quiz, one of the biggest mistakes that I see is people trying to read the answer right from here without a line there, and then they often get some numbers confused. Happens a lot. So I recommend drawing the line. And then I also recommend writing the equations afterwards. Now for this type, eventually you'll get to where this type is fine. You can just look at that and see what the answer is. But our other two types of solutions, which we'll do examples for, I would always write out the equations. We'll talk about those when we get to them. Well, let's go ahead and write out what these equations are now that they're in simplified form. So we have 1x, right? Because that's the coefficient for our x variable. The coefficient for y is 0. So we have plus 0y. Then we have that vertical line, which is equals, and that equals 3. Without the vertical line, I sometimes see people do this. They'll put the equal sign in the wrong place, and that just, in this case, it wouldn't matter because that's 0y, but it will matter for most everything else. Anyway, we can simplify that equation. 1x plus or minus 0y. Oh, why minus plus? It doesn't matter. It's a 0. 1x plus 0y equals 3. Simplifies to just x equals 3. And then our second equation, 0 in front of the x. 1 in front of the y. That equals 1. 0x plus 1y equals 1. And that gives us y equals 1. And again, back to from our graph, we got x is 3 and y is 1. From our elimination, we got x is 3, y is 1. And then from using the calculator, you still get x is 3, y is 1. So there are lots of ways to solve systems of equations. The calculator is the method that we're going to be using in class. All right, any questions? Well, somehow I managed to do this 9 minutes faster in this class than I did in my last class. So we'll go ahead and keep everyone on the same schedule and call it there. I'll be starting my virtual office hours tomorrow. Find them in Blackboard or at the bottom of my email. I will start my 3 hours. If you have any questions before then, please feel free to see me in the Otherwise, I will see you all on Thursday.